Namaste, hello, and welcome to your meditation practice. We'll be doing things a little bit differently here. We won't move straight into meditation. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the kind of meditation I'd like us to practice, and then I'll guide us into the practice in a few moments' time. I'd like to look at meditation as a way to become free from trauma in our lives. So I'll begin with a story of Patacharya. Now, this is an old Buddhist story, and Patacharya had terrible tragedy in her life. I mean, she had to run away from her family to marry whom she loved. She had two very difficult childbirths, lost her husband and then lost both her children, and returned to her home place to find that her family that had rejected her now were burnt in a fire. I mean, just a terrible story, and she was completely distraught, weeping, broken and undone. And she met this man who said to her, "Go see the Buddha. Maybe he can help you." So she went and she approached and she found the Buddha. And when the Buddha looked at her, he asked Ananda, his right-hand man, to put his own cloak, the Buddha's cloak, around her. And so the very cloak of the Buddha was wrapped around Patacharya, and the Buddha sat with her and breathed with her. And then he began to talk with her, and he talked about the impermanence of life and the nature of life, that everything is changing and that we get given this gift, but we need to live it wisely because it is not permanent. And because it is not permanent, we need to love well and to live well. And eventually, as these teachings began to calm her heart and to soothe her mind, she began to heal wearing this cloak of compassion of the Buddha. And eventually she actually became a nun and one of the most recognized meditation masters and teachers of her time. And what we need to do if we are dealing with trauma or sorrow or pain or fear or conflict or any of these, we need to learn to sit, and we need to wrap that cloak of mindfulness and compassion around us, and then to sit wrapped in the spirit of compassion and mindfulness until there is a healing that can occur. And this healing is almost like a precursor, or it perhaps maybe interwoven, but it is part of our path of meditation and our path towards enlightenment or gaining of wisdom. We need to first heal the traumas that we carry in our lives and our bodies so that we can become wise. And we all carry trauma, and we all need healing. Sometimes it's physical, but more often it's other struggles. And our meditation is where we begin to really experience this necessary healing of trauma that we carry. And I was having a conversation with a student the other day who had experienced trauma and really needed to take the time to feel the trauma through her body and to allow it to release. And it is so important. So when we meditate, we take that robe of loving compassion, of presence and of mindfulness, and we wrap it around ourselves. And sometimes the trauma that we carry, we all carry trauma, and sometimes that the trauma that we carry is layered over time and through different events. And sometimes we carry trauma from our childhood, from the life that we're living. Sometimes we carry trauma that we can't even identify, karmic trauma. Sometimes we're carrying trauma for the injustices that we see in the world. And it really doesn't matter what kind of trauma we're carrying. We need to sit for meditation. And we need to attend to our trauma. But how? And the how is in that cloak. That how is we need to meet our trauma with tenderness and with courage, because that is how it heals. You know, when we sit in that cloak, we bring dignity and compassion to what we have experienced. And when we first begin to sit in meditation, we might feel the trauma that we have in the body. So our physical body there's a holding of trauma and tension, and it might mean that we cannot sit comfortably. So we first have to deal with our body, our physical body, and prior to developing mindfulness, we need to find a way to stabilize the body and to stabilize the mind. And this is done through, it's called sila and samadhi. Now, sila is virtue and morality, or it's like good living. So we kind of have to clean up our act a little bit and begin to intentionally live lives. And most of us do this, to live lives of non-harming, of kindness and of compassion and of caring for those around us. So most of us can tick that box, but we need to find that right living. And you know, there's always improvement, or always ways we can become more right in our living. So and then the second thing we need to do is to find samadhi. And samadhi is like a stillness, a steadiness, a sort of collectedness for us to sit. So once we have worked on our sila and we sit down to meditate, and we'll do this in our practice, we're going to take these steps. We sit with our sila and we just begin by looking at the day or the week gone by. And we just note where we've been, where we've traveled. And this is not a time for persecution or guilt or to hold ourselves, because we want to look at the intention. You know, we're human and we live in all these sort of like waves of understanding and compassion and kindness, and we go in and out of, you know, grief and joy and kindness and cruelty and happiness and sadness, and we go through these waves. But we begin, the sila is to begin by looking at any day and to see our intention. So we begin by connecting to our intention in our right living. So our intention might be to be kind, or to be pure, or to be calm, or whatever your intention might be. And then once we've covered the sila and we've sat in that, then we need to find stability. And if you try and work through trauma, but you're not stable, you haven't developed a stability, a refuge within yourself, you can end up re-traumatizing yourself. So it's really advisable to go through these stages. And when we do the practice, if you find that you are not able to go further in the practice today, that's okay. Stop and then work on it again tomorrow, in a week's time. Slowly do the work that you need to do. But we need to find samadhi before we can work with the trauma that is present in the body. And to find the samadhi, there is ways that we can find stability. One way, if you know that you need, and we all need more stability, is find a regular yoga practice, a discipline. So stability, samadhi is sort of built through discipline and dedication and devotion. So the more disciplined we are, the more we're able to become stable. So find a practice like yoga and do that daily if you can, or as it works for you. It doesn't have to be yoga. It can be a practice of mindful walking, or it can be Tai Chi, or whatever works for you. But a discipline, it's more the discipline and the commitment to it to build the steadiness than what the practice actually is. Then the second thing is to develop stability, is to work on your breath. And we will, when we do our practice, we'll do a breath practice to anchor you, to bring you into your body. And then another way to find stability is to feel a place of safety in your body. Find a refuge, find a place of safety. So we need a refuge. When we're going to be working with trauma and releasing trauma, we need a refuge where we can return back when it's a safe place. And often that can just be found in a comfort in your body. Your refuge can just be drawn back into the heart center or back into your solar plexus, into the core. And then once we've worked with it and we found our stability, we then can move on to the next part of the practice, and that will be to be working with feelings. So when it comes to working with feelings, you begin to sit and you begin to allow the feelings to manifest in your body. And there's a Buddhist teacher, Ajahn Chah, who says, if you haven't really wept, you haven't started meditating yet. And there's two ways of weeping. There's the tears of grief, and then there's the tears of the way. And tears of grief is like that releasing of trauma, that releasing of pent-up emotions. It's a release. It's like a shaking off of the past. It's a cleansing breath. Cleansing tears. And once we've had the experience of tears of grief, that release, we can then possibly have an experience of what is known as tears of the way. And that is when our compassion awakens and we begin to see ourselves as part of everything, and we develop a kinship, and perhaps we weep tears of compassion for the injustice that we see in the world, or we have a kinship or a relationship to others, and we shed tears for the injustices that they suffer. So those are the two kinds of feelings that we can feel, but it is vital that we feel feelings. Feelings are not to be pushed aside, to be managed. We grow up in families, and I think we might all know this, and I think men experience this a lot more than women do, where they're told they're not allowed to cry. Much more acceptable to see a man enraged than to see a man crying. Women are told to hold it together, to be strong, not to be over emotional. And so we have this in our culture, but we also have these within ourselves. The thing is, to feel emotional, we have to be vulnerable. And vulnerability puts us in a place where perhaps we do not feel safe. And that's why, again, we've got to have that refuge in our bodies to return to when we're dealing with this practice of releasing trauma. Because we need to be vulnerable. We need to go, oh, what is that? What is that feeling? What is it? Let it be. Let it arise. And then allow it, and then feel it. And it's okay if you can't feel it today, and if you need to shut it down, maybe tomorrow's the day for you. And then once we've been through feelings, we begin to, and as we're working with feelings, we begin to gradually expand our window of tolerance. So we begin to allow ourselves to open up that a little more, just to crack a window to that emotion that we need to feel. And then when we reach the pinnacle of what we can feel in the moment, we return back to our refuge. And so we gradually expand our window of tolerance until we have fully uncovered. And then we sit and we feel and we allow. And in this sitting and this feeling and this allowing, then we begin to move beyond. And we move beyond without karma. We cleanse our karma. thus cleansing our trauma. And then we sit in these, we've been through the breath, the steadiness, the feelings, and then we maybe ask, what about the mind? What about our mind? It doesn't stop, it tells stories, it's in constant conversation. And if there's been trauma, and if we are dealing with trauma and releasing trauma, and trauma can be really small, and trauma can be huge. And I always say, begin to work with the trauma that's just on the edge. The trauma that you know, you can move through this, and the trauma that somebody upset you yesterday, and it's not life shattering trauma. And then you can begin to dig deeper. But if there's trauma, we need to tell it. Now, when we tell stories, it gives us a validation. Gives a validation to what we have experienced. And once the story's been told, it loses its power. And this telling of the story doesn't always mean having to just say it out loud. Sometimes we could journal it. Sometimes it can come through a painting. It can, there's different ways to tell our story, but we need our stories to be told. How and when we tell our stories, we need wisdom in that. You don't want to walk around just telling anybody who would listen your story. You want to seek counsel, seek community, a sharing circle, a teacher, a healing circle, somewhere where you feel that refuge, that safety. So not only do we have the refuge of safety in our bodies, but we need a safe place when it comes to the telling of our stories. We need someone who has compassion to hold our stories. And today with social media, there's so many groups out there that we can tap into. But it's important to know that, sometimes when it comes to telling the story, we can get caught. We can get caught in the trauma. We can get caught in the story, and that becomes our identity. So we must be sure that we are working through the story and not allowing the story to become us. Because trauma and suffering is not the end. And we should not let it limit us. We all have trauma, we all have suffering, and we need to allow it to be there so that we can heal and grow and develop our spirit. We need to not feel guilty, we need to feel love, so we do not want to feel remorse or loss. We need to say, yes, there is trauma and suffering in the world, but we do not need to be loyal to that suffering and take that suffering to be who we are. We need to find out who we are through all the suffering and the trauma to see who's really underneath that. And when we begin to do that and we begin to work with this cloak of compassion and kindness and mindfulness, we begin to uncover the divine within us, that essence of us that is there when we look at the mirror at the age of 7. It's there when we look in the mirror at the age of 20, at 27, at 57, at 97. That essence that flows through, that is not impermanent. Who we are, the divine. When we greet someone, we say namaste, and the greeting namaste says, the divine within me sees and acknowledges the divine within you. And that divine is beyond circumstance, beyond trauma, beyond age, creed, sex, circumstance. That divine is that eternal light within each and every one of us. We'll move into our meditation practice now. when you're ready. So if you want to take some time out now just to have a glass of water, or perhaps you want to just listen to this talk again to gain a little bit more understanding around what we're going to be doing, or if you want to save the meditation practice for another time, just press pause and you can come back when you're ready. Otherwise, if you're feeling ready now, let's just begin by coming into a comfortable seat. Wherever you are, make sure that you can feel both sit bones on the earth, that your spine is lengthened and upright. It's okay to lie down, but be mindful that you don't fall into sleep, and that you stay present in and active and awake. We want to get that energy moving up and down through our spine. And once you're comfortable and you're seated, you can broaden and open through the heart space, relax and soften through the shoulders, and just find some ease in your body. Allow there to be a weightedness in your arms. And then just take a couple of deep breaths in. And just sigh them out. Just a few of these. Now let's spend a few moments just understanding Sila, the good living in our lives. And just allow yourself to work your way through the past day or couple of days, a week, whatever works for you. I want to connect into the intention, but at the same time to allow ourselves to create this shroud, this cloak of compassion and mindfulness. If you know that there are spaces and places and times when you perhaps have not been in your best, just say, I'm sorry. Allow yourself to acknowledge and say, I'm sorry, without getting caught up in any stories. Let's clean the slate. Let's prepare the space for our meditation. Just clean up the space a little. And if there's something a little bit bigger that is kind of clawing at you and holding you back, perhaps just offer the Ponopono, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And as you begin to clear the space, as you begin to unpack the days gone by, you'll begin to experience a sense of lightness, opening up, creating a little bit of space. No more tightness. Feel the release maybe even in your body. Now we're going to begin to work on our samadhi, on our stability. And we'll begin with finding stability in our body. So I'd like you to bring your awareness to your feet. Maybe just wiggle your toes, move your toes a little, and maybe lift the heels and then lift the toes if you're seated, or point and flex if you're lying down. And just begin to feel the contact of your feet with the earth, and then just gently press into them. And take a moment to feel deep into the earth underneath you, feeling grounded. And then draw your awareness up through the legs, feeling your knees and your thighs, and bring your awareness right into your sit bone, into your seat, and allow yourself to feel comfortable, to feel rooted down through your sit bone. Can you feel the earth underneath you? Can you feel the sit bone as it reaches into your mat or your pillow? And then from this space of stability through the rooting down of the tailbone, can you reach up and travel slowly with awareness up your spine? And as your awareness travels up the spine, it brings an opening, a space, a stability right up through between the shoulder blades, up through the back of the neck, right to the back of the head, and up through the crown. And it's like there's this awakening into a pillar that is holding you up, lifting you up, awakening into your spine. And then from this lift from your spine, can you allow the awareness to run down the sides, softening the jaw, the ears, the throat, softening the shoulders. Bring a weight into your arms, allow them to drop heavy. And you find yourself caught here in this strong downward energy into the earth, and then this uplift through the spine into the crown, and then this melting back down through the shoulders and the arms back into the earth. And you begin to cultivate a stability in your posture. Now we want to cultivate a stability in our breath. So wherever you're at right now, just exhale completely. And then inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Let's add a pause. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And then exhale. 2, 3, 4. And inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale, hold, exhale. Let's wait. Continue, inhale, hold, exhale. Wait. We're going to extend our breath now. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Wait. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Wait. Do a few more rounds. And let's begin to find our refuge, our place of safety. So perhaps right now you can settle into the center of your heart or into the sit bones. Find your place of refuge. If it's not accessible here, perhaps bring to mind a place where you felt really, really safe and secure and loved and nurtured. This is now where we drape that coat of compassion, of mindfulness, of care around ourselves. We drape ourselves in this cloak and find that safe space, that place of refuge. Allow yourself to sit here now. Feeling secure, feeling safe, feeling loved, and feeling held. And now we begin to allow those feelings to rise up within us. Ask yourself, what is here now? What needs to be revealed to you? What do you need to feel? Be open. And then embrace what comes. Allow what comes to be present. And under this cloak of compassion, we are allowed to feel what we have buried deep within us. And we need to understand it. And allow yourself to be open. Try not to prescribe what you think you need to feel, but allow feelings to come. There could be feelings of joy right now. But be present. This is a cleansing practice. Be open and allow. We are shaking off. We are moving into wisdom. And as we move into wisdom, into enlightenment, it's bringing us closer to who we really are, closer to moving home. No more separation or loneliness, but connection. So allow yourself to move through what you need to move through. Feel from a space of knowing that your refuge, your sanctuary, your safe place is right there if you need to retreat. But be brave, be bold, step forward, allow. And know that if you allow these feelings, if you can let what is present be here, it's a cleansing of your karma, so that we do not have to continue to live with the same trauma, the same suffering. But we can sit, we can allow, we can feel, and then we can move beyond. Now you ask yourself, bird, what about the mind? What story do we need to tell? Can you allow that cloak to be a holding, a safe place for your story to be told? Can your story be told without guilt, without shame? In the holding of the space, can you allow your story to be without the desire or the attachment for it to be anything else but what it is right now? Complete acceptance in the moment. Because this is not the end. Can you rise up out of your story? Can you rise up? Can you connect into your truth? Can you connect into the divine in you? Can you be lifted up out of suffering and into wisdom? And as we get lifted up out of suffering and out of wisdom, as our light begins to shine, so we are able to move to those around us and to help them to light their light, to share our light and to ignite the lights of others. Namaste. The light that is within me sees and honors the light that is within you.